Hey guys, what is up? My name is Tate, and today I'm going to be debating about why there should not be a cap against travel nursing wages. So, kind of a refresh. The last 6 months, year and a half, especially through the pandemic, travel nurses have been making a significant amount of money. And some individuals, both non-nursing and nursing, think that's a bad idea. They think there should be a cap and they should only make this much money, while others think that they should continue to make a larger amount of money. So today we're just going to be going through a few little items that can kind of explain why there shouldn't be a cap and kind of the reasons why paying these nurses is a good thing for what they're doing. So kind of just starting off so these are travel nurses. Most of them are kind of picking up their lives and kind of moving. They may be moving hours away part of the week if you work 3/12s, okay? Some of these nurses are leaving their families for 3-4 days at a time. So it's not like they're just driving 20 minutes to work, okay? They are traveling. They're spending drive time, their time on the road, time away from family, friends, and let alone they are in a new environment, right? There's not a whole lot of people they know unless they're traveling with someone. But it's a potentially new charting system, new procedures and protocols. And that's stressful. That's stressful as a nurse. Even as a nursing student, that's stressful. So they are traveling. So I think they should be reimbursed for the time that they are gone away from families, friends, as well as just the stress in general. And then we can talk about the work life. So a lot of these hospitals, clinics, outpatient centers are short-staffed, and we get that. I feel like it's a problem most everywhere you go nowadays is everyone's short-staffed. So these travel nurses are willing to kind of step up and be like, you know what? I'm going to go to this hospital that I know nothing about, and I'm going to work there. Now, some may say it was for the money, which when it first started, travel nursing wasn't that much bigger moneymaker than it is today. So they didn't necessarily solely do it for the money. But these travel nurses went 3 or 4 hours away from their home, stayed in a hotel or an Airbnb, VRBO for 3 or 4 nights while they worked. And now keep in mind, we are nurses, and the work conditions are not always optimal. So a lot of these hospitals and outpatient centers were understaffed, okay? And the reason that they can afford to get help is because they're willing to pay more. Hence why travel nursing makes money. If you want to get employees, you got to pay more. That or increase your benefits package. But most people don't go for that. They go for the money. And so I think it's very beneficial that these hospitals that were understaffed said, hey, we're going to pay more so that we can get more people to come help us. If you have a hospital that is short-staffed all the time, it's a danger. I mean, it's a danger to everyone. Obviously, we're nurses, and we know our jobs are hard, right? We go through intense schooling, lots of studying, lack of sleep, lots of caffeine, lots of schooling, and then you get to the job, and most likely you're understaffed. I mean, you may be getting 4, 5, 6, 7 patients. You're working long hours. You're staying late because you're charting. You're staying late because a patient had a stroke and you're doing TPA charting, or your patient's in restraints and you have to do restraint charting. So it's not like you just show up to work for a couple hours, you work and you go home, right? It's normally a little longer than that. So to benefit these nurses, we pay them more. And if you cap their wages, you're going to lose that. You're going to lose those nurses from traveling. And if you lose those nurses from traveling, these hospitals not only are a danger to society, but the hospitals may have to shut down. If nurses quit because of the pandemic, if nurses quit because they're older, if nurses quit because they're just burnt out of nursing, and you don't have new ones coming in to replace them, the hospital can't run, right? So by capping them, you may cause danger to the hospital as well as potentially allow them to shut down someday. I'm not saying it's going to be immediate, but there's a potential there. So the work condition for nurses in general is harsh, right? Sure, you're inside, you're in the air conditioning, but you're working, you're stressed, you're taking emotional stress, let alone physical, moving patients, picking them up, getting yelled at, getting cussed at. So the work condition is tough. And this quote, this comes from the article called "Some States Are Trying to Cap Travel Nurses' Pay. Here's Why That's a Bad Idea." So this is what one of these authors has to say on this article. Price is merely a signal that represents the amount of resources available. Those who wish to implement price caps really just wish to ignore the reality. But while they may wish to bury their head in the sand, it won't shield them from the results of the policy. Price caps cause shortages. It's a basic supply and demand. What they're saying there is, it's true. If you want nurses to come work for you, if you want anyone to come work for you, you gotta pay them. And so if these nurses feel like they're not getting paid what they're worth, they're not gonna come work for you. Supply and demand. Price caps causes shortages. If we say, nope, you're not making any more money, well, fine, I'm not gonna come work for you. Now you have a hospital who's understaffed. The nurses are quitting because they're overworked, they're burnt out. That's the effects that a price cap could have on the nursing industry, let alone travel nursing. And another article or blog that's called "Hospitals Desperately Need Staff, but Capping Travel Nurses' Pays Won't Help." They say, over the long term, hospitals have failed to hire and support enough nurses to weather crises. And that's true. We saw that even through the pandemic. Understaffed. Hospitals often say there simply aren't enough nurses to hire, and that's true in most of the country. Particularly in low-income rural areas, there aren't always enough nurses to go around. And because the majority of these nurses are older than the age of 50, as the baby boomer generation ages into needing more medical care, there's been a demand and a surge for nursing. So, with this baby boomer generation that is getting older, retiring, physical therapy, they're needing more help around home, they're going to the hospital because they fell and break a hip. If this new generation of nurses feel that they're not getting paid enough to show up to work, they're not going to show up. They're going to quit. So, by capping travel nurses, these hospitals are going to remain understaffed, which means these baby boomers are not getting cared for how they should. And then the last one that I found and I thought was a good article was posted by this article called "Reasons Your Clients Shouldn't Cap Nursing Staff Salaries." And this is directed towards management more. Is that, and they quote, "And then there are the cost of onboarding new nurses. Salaries and benefit packages aside, employees will have to pay for compliance, training, testing new hires, and performed background checks." A lot of people will say, hey, instead of paying more to these experienced travel nurses, why not just hire more nurses, more new grads? And they're calling it out right here. You got to pay for training, you got to pay for compliance, you got to pay for background checks. That's not let alone benefits and packages and sign-on bonuses, and all that adds up. So over time, it makes more sense to pay these experienced nurses more, because in the long run, you're not paying for all those trainings and new hire testings and all that. So some argument why we should cap is because, hey, hire more new nurses. But at the same time, it's costing about an equal amount of money, if not more, to hire new nurses. Not saying you shouldn't hire new nurses, because you should. But you also need those experienced nurses who can teach the young nurses, right? You can't have just a hospital full of new grad nurses. That's dangerous. You need those experienced nurses. And the only way you're going to get those experienced nurses is by paying them more. So I hope that you guys have learned something from this video and that you found something beneficial of why we just should not cap travel nursing wages, because overall it can just be a danger to society and just to the world we live in. So if you guys have any questions or comments or concerns, please reach out. I look forward to discussing this further in this Week in Trends. So thank you.